atop his spire, covered in snow, sat the grumpiest, loneliest biomancer of them all. With furrowed brows and spite in his heart, he huffed and puffed, for there was one thing he could not have. His name was Seu-Grin, the scheming arbiter of sorrow. In this holiday season, his bitterness was quite thorough. With ice in his veins and scorn in his gaze, Seu-Grin looked down from his spire. Below in the far distance, he spotted the makings of a festive gathering, which caused him significant ire. Jolly Nick Claus stood in front of a merry bonfire, spreading the good word of the deist, or possibly theist, church, so all could admire. Words of love and gratitude were spread from lip to lip, as well as foods, presents, and delicious drink. The people rejoiced under the guidance of good old Nick. Seu-Grin observed with anger from a distance, until he decided to put an end to it all in an instant. In the dark of the night, he ventured down from his spire, seeking to draw out the joyous bonfire. With malice and dark magic, the fire was snuffed out. Seu-Grin stole the presents and promptly checked out. The very next day, as the sun rose above the spire, the grouchy biomancer witnessed something he could not help but admire. The people below him were gathered in a big circle, and jolly Nick Claus sat directly in the middle. "Do not mourn the snuffed-out bonfire," said the priest, "for the true fire burns within us all, even in situations this dire." So it was that Seu-Grin sat alone in his sorrow, and jolly Nick Claus brought about a better festive morrow.
Hey, it's Brandon from Table of Gamings. We're going to be playing a game of First Blood using the latest festive mission pack from Parabellum. In this Jolly vs. Mean, we pit the 100 Kingdoms led by Nick Claus into combat over holiday packages against Seu-Grin and the Spire's force. As we push and pull to bring these packages to our home base, we get to see who is the best, the Icy Heart of Seu-Grin or the Knuckle Dusters of Nick Claus. Hang out and watch this mission as we see who wins this holiday mission.
Okay, for the 100 Kingdoms army, we have Saint Nick, 7 men-at-arms with a leader, 11 militia, where one of them is the Order of the Errant, 3 individual household knights, and 4 mercenary crossbow. Then we have 3 brute drones, 1 unit of 2 and 1 unit of 1, the Grinch, Seu-Grin, 4 marksman clones, and a unit of 12 Vanguard clones. There's 1 objective marker in the center representing the presence, and at the end of each round, whoever controls the objective marker, the marker will move 6 inches towards that player's objective zone. If the marker is in an objective zone, the player who controls that zone gains 15 points. There's also 2 points for killing the enemy warlord, 3 points for controlling the enemy zone, and the game ends when you get to 25 points. The terrain is 4 pieces of obscuring around the center marker with little gaps for shooting arrows in. There are 2 impassable rocks kind of just outside of each opponent's area, and then their objective zones are, for the 100 Kingdoms, a little Christmas village, and for the Grinch, little mountainous area because he comes down from the mountain. For supremacy, I roll a 4, he rolls a 5, he has less, so he makes me re-roll. And then I get a 2, he keeps a 5, so I go first, and Santa charges right into a brute drone. Santa does 4, clash 3 attacks, makes 2 of them. The drone ends up failing 2, and then he takes an additional 2 resolve damage, leaving him on 1 wound left. Santa couldn't quite cut it. Then the 2 brute drones decide that they're going to try to get some damage in onto the men-at-arms succeed their charge, run in, clash, and do 3 damage, and then 2 resolve damage to the men-at-arms, which does end up breaking them. The men-at-arms are my next card draw anyways, so they just rally and then disengage, skirting around and trying to get closer to Saint Nick, which isn't going to help them out too much because there's only 2 models left. The Vanguard clones just use their high movement to do 2 marches and kind of reposition and make a little wall so that I can't sneak around and like get more guys on the brute drones or anything. They stay inside the forest so that my mercenary crossbowmen aren't gonna just shoot them to death. My mercenary crossbowmen march up and do an execution blow, making 8 attacks, which 6 hit. At AP 1, his defense 3 on his brute drones is reduced down to 2, and he ends up taking 4 of those damage. That mean old Seu-Grin undoes all of the damage that Saint Nick did to that brute drone with a command ability. Then, as his first action, he walks up. Second action gives virulence to the brute drone, giving it deadly blades and decay. Then transfers that decay on to joyful old Saint Nick, which is quite rude. This is where my true master plan of everything comes into play. See, that Knight Errant of the Order of the Shield is the real big man, the real bringer of holiday joy. He activates Jury Mode, which gives reroll 6s to the militia and some bonus to him, plus 1 attack. He charges in, leading the militia into the brute drones, hits with everything, does a ton of damage. The militia do a little bit more damage. They are failing saves and are all over the place. The brute drones disappear. Thank you, Knight Errant of the Order of the Shield. The virulence brute drone inspires and clashes Santa with Flurry. He ends up doing 4 hits out of his, I think, 5 attacks. Then Santa only takes 2 of it, but takes an additional resolve damage because, you know, he's so sad that all of his damage was completely undone by the Seu-Grin, not the Grinch, Seu-Grin. But luckily, the drone does have decay because of the virulence and ends up taking 3 damage, which isn't enough to kill it, but still, that's pretty good. For me, Santa. Now on the 100 Kingdoms side, we get into the second source of big plays, the 3 Household Knights. My first one marches up, charges, and just tramples all over a Vanguard. To 1 hit, they fail it, and then there's a resolve damage, so he has to pull out some other guy from the unit, which is crazy damage. Not really, but you know how it is. The marksman drones move up and then shoot some arrows at the men-at-arms through the gap in the 2 trees. End up killing the last 2 guys. They shoot 8 attacks, hit 4 times, and the men-at-arms fail 3 of their saves. So those 2 guys are gone. My next big night play happens. I march up. It's just outside of like 9 inches to charge. I think I need a 2 or 3. Roll a perfect one, which is always what you're looking for. Stumble forward a little. He doesn't have any cards left on his stack, so I immediately get to move my second knight. And he just march. Just to set up a position for the next turn. I am solidly in control of the presence, so they move 6 inches towards my objective zone. At the end of the turn, it's looking pretty good for me. I've scored 2 points for holding the presence. The presence are closer to my zone, which means farther away from him. He has to fight through me to get to it. I've killed a ton of his stuff, his 2-man brute drone unit, and one of his Vanguard clones, and did some damage to a brute. Gonna have to deal with the marksman because I think they can do a ton of damage, but I'm very well positioned despite the failed charge to just send 1 to 2 units and knights into it, and then everything else is gonna just pile into the Vanguard clones and maybe try to go for Seu-Grin. Luck is on Santa's side tonight as I win priority once again. I capitalize on this initiative by charging my household knight into both his marksman clones and his Vanguard clones. I whiff the impact hits into the marksman clones, so then I have to clash into them. The end result is that 2 of his marksman clones die, and I'm stuck in combat with the Vanguard clones, which reduces the number of options that he has. He kind of has to pile into them and can't just run around, or he can disengage, but I've given him some trouble. The brute drone attacks, inspires clashes, has flurry, also has terrible luck because even with flurry, only 1 hit gets through. Santa also has bad luck, fails the defense roll, passes the resolve, takes 1 damage net. So my knight charges in, gets more hits, 2 impact hits hit. They failed 2 defense rolls. His standard bearer is in melee, so dies. He fails a resolve test, so a total of 3 casualties from impact. Then I clash, moving 2 inches to get deeper into the unit and in more range of more guys. Clash, kill 1. He does not fail the resolve, so, net 4 damage, pretty good, all considered. So Seu-Grin activates at this point, and he uses his dastardly ability to revive 4 or 5 of the Vanguard clones, basically hurting my feelings as Santa Claus. Just really rude stuff he's doing. The next insidious move of the Seu-Grin is to give his Vanguard clones Virulence, which again gives Deadly Blades and Decay 6. He then follows it up with Entropic Transfer to give to the knight that's closer to his objective zone, so the first one that charged into this combat. I guess it was the second, because this is the guy that went into the marksman clones. So then he finishes it off with a tiny little scooch across, away from the other knight. I move 10 inches onto the objective with my loose knight. His marksman clones activate. They lose their casualty token because they weren't healed before their activation. They kind of scooch over to get clear line of sight onto my knight and launch some attacks. which the knights completely block because defense 3 plus shield is very powerful when you don't have any armor penetration going into it. I make another Galaxy Brain decision by moving the crossbows onto the objective markers to claim it and gain more points. They then shoot through their little place in the forest at the single Vanguard clone on the edge of it. Of their 8 crossbow bolts, only one of them makes contact, but it does kill the vile elf guy. The Vanguard clones then activate, they inspire, they clash, they do the whole process of piling in, and then make their attack rolls. They spread their attacks between the 2 knights. The first knight, the one farther towards their objective, takes 5 hits, fails 3 of his defense rolls, fails 2 resolve rolls, removed from the table. The next knight is much more lucky or skilled, however you want to read into it. He passes all of his defense rolls and takes absolutely 0 damage. What a champion. We love that guy. He's out of cards, so I flip my militia and he cries a little. The militia charge into the brute drone and the Vanguard clones. Injury mode so that they all get reroll 6s and the Knight Errant gets +1 attack. He makes 5 attacks into the brute drone. Since he's looking for 4s, he hit 3 times and the brute drone fails 2 of his defense rolls, killing him. And then the militia spend a lot of time rolling dice and miss literally everything. Can't win them all. But hey, the Errant's still good. And the militia are attacking into the Vanguard clones because the brute drone I knew was going to die to the Knight Errant who rules. Saint Nick charges into action, switches from the list to Dancer and Prancer, which gives him +3 attacks and relentless blows. Charges into Seu-Grin, rolls 7 attacks, hitting on 4s, makes 8 hits because of relentless blows. Seu-Grin fails 5 of his defense rolls, and then fails 3 resolve rolls, taking a total of 8 damage. Now, Seu-Grin has 6 wounds. So obviously he dies. And I'm all like, hey, I just won. I just won the game. I beat up the Grinch. Then he says, hey, wait, remember I put decay on you at the beginning of the last turn? And it turns out, yes, that was true, and it still hung on because it goes until the end of my next activation. Decay, let me tell you, listener, watcher, battle report viewer, that decay took Santa Claus out. There is not going to be Christmas this year because of that nasty, nasty Seu-Grin and his entropic transfer. Thinks he's so cool. All that is absolutely fine, though, because my mercenary crossbowmen did secure the presence. They moved 6 inches closer to my objective, and I gained 2 points for killing the Grinch, 3 points for holding his zone, so that's 5, and then 2 points for holding the presence, so 7. It's 9 to his 2, because he defeated Santa Claus. Still, pretty solid lead. Solid enough that we can basically end the game here. We do continue playing, and we play it out until it actually ends. It's just one more round. He loses basically everything. The objective moves on to my zone because I continue to move my mercenary crossbowmen on it. It's not really much of a game left. And that's just because, obviously, Santa Claus is more powerful than the Grinch. And that's a holiday lesson you can take home with you.
And there you go. We just finished the game and we were able to see that the 100 Kingdoms were able to secure the packages for their side. First Blood is a very different game than full-blown Conquest. I think things that surprise me is my Spire's force are substantially smaller than the 100 Kingdom forces Isaac brought, but they didn't seem to matter. The eliteness of the vanguards and the brutes weren't able to do much against the militia bowmen, who apparently were the biggest killers in this game. I think it mainly had to do with the fact they were backed up by the unit attachment, who was able to put out a lot of pain using his judgment ability. But it was interesting, and it is a very different game experience from the normal ranky flanky. And I'm excited that we were able to use this with these new models, and I thought it was a very fun and interesting mission that used different objectives than just standing in circles. I thought it was really cool that we're fighting over an objective that tug of war between the two locations. It's a little different than what's in the normal mission pack, and I thought it was fun and thematic. And the new models are really cool, and I thought it was a nice way to ring in the holidays. So hope you enjoyed this battle report. Stay tuned as we continue to do more. And I was enjoy gaming. See you next time.
Where'd you get all this Conquest?
Well, I bought it from their e-store.
Isn't buying on their e-store more expensive than third-party websites?
Well, it's not, because I used code TABLEIT, TABLEIT, to get a 10% discount on all this stuff.
Maybe I should start a new Conquest army.